Hi everyone, this is Mindy Eggen. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to share with you how just by adding the smallest of details can really make your card project stand out. I'm also going to walk you through how I go about picking out my cardstock when it comes to layering die sets. In particular, I'm going to be working with the Honeybee Stamps Lovely Layers Vintage Reindeer. This set has been super popular, so if it is not available, be sure to click the notify me button. I'm going to provide a few different options for you down in the video description, but be sure to hit the notify me button. Or if you already have this in your stash, I hope this inspires you to create. I did all of my die cutting off screen, so I'm pretty much going to walk through what the pieces look like for each layer because sometimes I think that that can be confusing. So I did have it kind of layered together there, but I am going to break down each piece. And I am going to be creating later on that deco label that I did out of white cardstock. Now, the first thing I always do when I get these lovely layers is look at the idea sheet that Honeybee Stamps provides. Then I can start taking a look at each of the pieces individually. So for this one here, this actually die cuts out the base of the head and also the antler. So one antler is attached, but the other one is not. It is included in that die though. Now I will be die cutting that twice so I can layer those two up together. And I'm going to quickly go through here what each of the piece looks like and the layering cardstock that I'm going to use. A big thing that I do when I start looking at these lovely layers is I have a swatch book. I didn't show it on screen, but I do have a swatch book of cardstock, and I will flip through all of that cardstock to figure out which colors either best match the example that they gave because they do an amazing job, or just to choose what shade of red or what shade of green that I want. This is one of the few instances where I will really mix and match my cardstock. Typically, I will stay within one company, but when it comes to the layers, I get really specific on which colors I want to use. Now that I showed you all of the dies and the layers that they coincide with, I'm going to start gluing my pieces together and adding my shading. So as I mentioned earlier, the base piece with the head and the one antler attached, I did die cut twice from a dark shade of brown cardstock, mainly because I wanted the antlers to have a little bit of stability behind them. That kind of loose antler, I just added some liquid glue and added it to the back of the head. Then I can start adding some shading. So you're going to see me flip between many shades of brown. You're going to see me flip between different companies, just depending on what shade that I want. You may think that all inks are the same or all the colors are the same, but they really aren't. There are some companies that just have different shades than others. I do start with oxides for the reindeer, and then later on, I will switch to some different inks. But again, I take a swatch book where I have all of my companies swatched out and I will flip through it to figure out what shade is best. So I did that really for the cardstock. The ink, I probably should have checked a little bit better because some of the areas I picked out a brown that maybe was too light for the area. Or when I get to the greens, I probably should have really checked the book a little better so that I could pick out the shade of green that I really wanted. So as I ink blended each layer with a little bit of shading, I used a mini blending brush from Honeybee Stamps. It has a slanted edge to it, which is kind of fun to work with. And once I get the ink blending on there, just that little bit of shading, then I go ahead and start attaching everything. So right now it's just the base piece. The eye, I did die cut from black cardstock. There is an eyelash that I did from like a dark gray. And then there is the eyebrow that I did from a dark brown. And a lot of these pieces have like an etched uh, area to it. So it helps you with alignment. And then we have just that little piece for the nose, which is super, super cute. So my reindeer is technically done. This is what you really have to work with. The rest of the pieces that are included in that die set are really just additional elements you can use to decorate your reindeer. I did bring in a white gel pen to add a couple little dots to the eye, but then I added some ribbon to the top of his antlers, and then this is going to be kind of this garland that is going to be at the bottom of his neck. I did die cut out a scarf because that's also included on that die set. But I decided to go with this foliage down there because I just thought it was a little bit more Christmassy. I wanted more Christmassy than I did winter. So here you're going to see that I'm bringing in now different inks. I'm bringing in an intense black ink. I'm bringing in some dye inks and adding that shading there with some small blending brushes. You definitely don't have to do it, but sometimes it is these little details that really step up your images. I am working on a sticky mat. This is a large, I think it's 9 by 12 sticky mat from Altenew. It is just holding my cardstock pieces in place while I did the ink blending and then also when I'm attaching, so it's not sliding over my glass work surface. I also wanted a little bit more foliage to this, so those two really light green pieces up at the top of the screen, that came from the Lovely Layers Mini Holiday Florals, I believe it's called. I just wanted a couple extra sprigs to kind of fill that in a little bit, and I'm going to add a little bit of liquid glue to the stem and then place that behind there. If you want to have that secured a little bit better, you could always just tape them on to the back of your deer. So those are just kind of filling it in a little bit more. I added some thin white foam squares to the back of my reindeer, and I am going to place this on top of my piece that I die cut. I believe this is the Deco labels. It's everything's going to be linked down below in the video description. And I just added that on top of there. And then I have, instead of doing the red berries that I did for that foliage with the bells, I die cut that same dye from white. And I'm adding that to that light green in the background, just a little bit something different, and because it's a light green cardstock, I decided to go with the white colored cardstock. Then for the background for this piece, I'm going to be using the Snowflakes 3D embossing folder. I wanted something subtle. I didn't want something to kind of overpower my design. And a lot of times I will kind of feel around on my embossing folder to figure out which way I want this to go. So I have a light blue cardstock that I picked out. I'm going to place that in the embossing folder. And I'm going to use my Gina K Designs Intri-Cut machine to do this. When you are using your die cut machine for a 3D embossing folder, be sure to experiment with it and don't force the embossing folder through. Just kind of test it. I did there. I kind of tested it. It was a little tough, so I loosened it. You may need to remove a plate or maybe just add a thin shim. So just experiment with it, but don't force it. And then here is my panel. I'm going to hold it up and tilt it so you can see that snowflake design on there. I apologize, the sun came out and totally overexposed my video, but you can see when you hold it up, it's got that gorgeous design. Now I'm taking the Honeybee Stamps white pigment ink and I'm going to drag this over the top. So right now, facing up, I have the snowflakes are pushed up. And I just went over that with that white pigment ink. And it's again something that you don't have to do, but sometimes it's those small details that just really make everything come together. The sentiment I was a little stuck on. I'm using some sentiments from the Jingle All The Way set. I couldn't decide which one I wanted, so I'm stamping 4 of the ones that I favorited out of that one. I'm going to stamp them on white cardstock with the intense black ink, and then I'm going to die cut them with their coordinating die. So now I don't have my panel attached down yet. I kind of let that be. And I'm just grabbing each of the sentiments and you can see I'm moving it around to figure out which one did I like best, where the placement was really what I was struggling. And then suddenly it hit me that I have that ribbon up there in his antlers. And these small sentiments fit so perfectly with that ribbon up on top by his antlers. I was really focused on the bottom half, but this was a great place to put my sentiment. So I added a couple thin strips of foam squares to the center of it. And then I'm going to add liquid glue to the ends. I'm going to place that right in between. So it looks like the ribbon is kind of holding up my sentiment. I definitely wanted to add some sparkle to this. So after I added foam tape to the back of my panel, I'm going to go ahead and get that added to the front of the card. And then I'm going to bring in some glossy accents. I'm going to place that over all of the white berries and also the red berries. And then I'm going to sprinkle over the top of that with some rock candy. And this is perfect because it's giving it such a nice sparkly touch without kind of covering up the color. You could also use something like stickles. I've used that in the past to do that kind of glittery effect. I'm also going to add the glossy accents to the nose and the eye. This was kind of scary. I wasn't sure if this was going to work, but I added it to the eye as well. And then also to the bells. I just wanted those areas to be shiny. And then right now on video, it's going to look cloudy where all of that glossy accent is, but once it dries, it's going to be clear and shiny. You'll see it in the pictures better. And then also I have some leftover rock candy glitter on there that will fall off once everything is completely dry. Also, keep in mind that this reindeer would look adorable on a tag. So, if you just sit and do a bunch of die cutting sometime, maybe create some tags, this would be super sweet. Even that deco label that I used for my focal point would make a great tag. I hope you all enjoyed today's inspiration. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will have all of my supplies listed down below in the video description and over on my blog.